Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we've got a yellow rain warning issued for parts of the south and the southwest. It is very unsettled over the course of the next few days with a lot of rain coming in from this southwesterly wind. We've got sort of opposite air masses to what we've had over the last couple of weeks. We had very cold Arctic air masses, now we've got very warm and moist mid-Atlantic air masses with widely temperatures into the low teens today. That will continue for the rest of this week, probably not quite as mild, as that air will get moderated with more of a westerly flow and less of a southerly edge to it. But it will still be generally average to above average before we head into the Christmas period. Starting around Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, it does look likely cold air will try and filter back in from the north, as we see right at the end of the UKV run, and we'll see it on the longer range models. There's huge uncertainties with how the low pressure systems over the top of us do resolve themselves, as if they do clear out into the North Sea, towards Europe, as they usually do, we would start to pull in a northerly wind in, and there are signs of blocking to return, and the GFS today has a locked in colder pattern, whereas other runs have that cold air flirting with us. But because those low pressure systems sort of just stall and never move through, we stay generally in sort of average air masses, not particularly cold, not particularly mild, a bit of snow in Scotland, and generally sort of a miserable sort of Christmas period with temperatures around that sort of mid-single digits with a lot of rain and cloud around. So we've got sort of two different scenarios, and they all sort of start and veer away from each other on around Christmas Day. So there is huge uncertainty in 6 days' time as to how the weather models will be going, and I'm pretty sure over the next day or two it will be resolved. But we'll have a look at the various sort of situations here for the next few weeks, as the Christmas period from Christmas Day to New Year could be very cold, blocked and snowy, but also could just be average and rainy as well. All depends on what happens to the low pressure systems through Christmas Day and Boxing Day. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. This is the first time really. A little bit yesterday we saw a lot of rain around. This really is the first time we've just got all rain over the British Isles at the moment. No snow at all. You can see where all the cold air has been pushed out towards Eastern Europe and Scandinavia, where they're seeing heavy snow there, where the milder air is coming sort of to a halt. But across the UK we are firmly in very mild air, and you can see all these streaks of precipitation, so real moist air masses creating a lot of this convection and heavier rain pushing in from the south and the southwest. Very heavy rain across Scotland, and we've continually got heavy rain across the south, and just more areas of moisture is going to be thrown at these parts, and we're just going to see more heavy rain over the course of the next few days. Areas further eastwards are the driest, but a lot of cloud around, muggy air mass pretty much everywhere is pretty miserable. If you put on the temperatures around 3 p.m, you'll be able to see this is a very warm day for this time of year. Very muggy out there. Stronger winds as well, and you see those temperatures widely towards that sort of 10 to 14 degree mark. You can see where the cold air is shoved towards Eastern Europe and Scandinavia, and we're sort of in this milder wedge along with Netherlands, Belgium and France. Elsewhere it is still very cold across most of Northern Europe, and even into Scotland it is still hanging on slight cold air across the highest ground, but very mild generally. And these areas have seen many centimetres of snow. Southeast England had sort of 7 days of lying snow in places. Now nothing remains after 24 hours of this milder air. Now if you look at the weather warnings, we do have a yellow rain warning issued from 6 p.m. last night until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Again, it's for the south coast, last all the way into Tuesday, and you can see that we could see 20 to 40 millimetres for many areas, and some even higher. I think some stations have already recorded 100 millimetres, but again, it is highly variable, and there already are some flood warnings issued. High likelihood, a lower end of the impact, and for some areas we're also seeing issues with snow melt as well, because many areas have seen quite a build up of snow that all melting at one time can cause some issues. So even places where we're not seeing the heaviest rain but still seeing the milder air, we'll see issues with the snow melt, especially for higher ground of northern England, Scotland, but elsewhere still could be some issues around. But I know many of you probably are enjoying this milder weather, but also many of you are probably looking forward to something perhaps a bit more seasonable, especially heading towards Christmas. And as we see on the UKV, it is trending colder over the course of the next few days, but nothing bitterly cold in the next 5 days. maybe the north in Christmas into Boxing Day, and could flood southwards as well, as we see from this run. Now you can see it is very unsettled at the moment, and that just continues through today into tomorrow, and you can see by Tuesday afternoon it is turning drier with less showers around and more of a west to northwesterly tilt to the airflow, so showers turning a bit more to snow across Scotland again. So temperatures are just dropping there slightly through Tuesday. Still very mild in the south as we head into Wednesday. You see another weather front there that's sort of dividing between that slightly cooler air and another push of milder air in the southeast. So you could see some more very heavy rain through Wednesday and into Thursday, more bouts of precipitation. But watch what happens as we head into the weekend. The air starts to veer more from a northerly direction for Scotland. We could actually see some heavy snow there through Friday. Elsewhere in the south, still stuck in those milder conditions. But watch what happens. Snow showers starting to arrive through Christmas Eve in the north. Scotland and far parts of northern England, especially over higher ground, could start to see cold air return and snow. And the reason for this is northerly winds are trying to come back in. All models get to this stage where cold air is digging in to the north, but whether it progresses southwards all depends on the low pressure system sitting over the top of us at the moment, giving all these showers and these bouts of precipitation, whether it will clear out into the North Sea. We'll have to look at the long range models in a minute for that. But you can see by the 850 HPA temperatures how we're sort of in average air in the south. Look at that bitterly cold air, the -10 isotherm approaching Scotland there for Christmas Eve. So definitely looking likely from the UKV and from most models, Scotland, Northern England, maybe even Northern Ireland could see cold weather. Below average weather for the Christmas period, at least the start through Christmas Eve, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and of course with that brings the risk of snow. So yes, for northern areas of the British Isles, there's actually quite a high chance this year of seeing some sort of white Christmas. Whether that's an official white Christmas, snow falling out the sky, or sort of wintry precipitation around in terms of frost on the ground, or snow falling out the sky, sleet, ice around, looking likely we could be seeing those colder conditions return. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, we can see this afternoon those temperatures widely around that sort of 12 to 14 degree mark. But as we head into tomorrow, it should cool down with those temperatures more around the sort of 8 or 9 degree mark. Still above average this time of year, where the average should be around 7 or 8, so a degree or two above average, but not quite as mild as today has been, but still a lot warmer than last week. And of course the week before that, to be honest, as well. Through Wednesday, those temperatures still are more towards average, actually, 5 to 8 degrees there. But again, it's going to be sort of oscillating around average to slightly above. And you can see by Wednesday, a slightly milder wedge of air comes in for the south, 11 or 12. And then it's as we head into Friday, look at that much colder air sinking in for the north. And you can see for the 23rd, widely below freezing across Scotland, creeping into northern England and maybe parts of Northern Ireland, getting down to the low single digits. Wintry precipitation there arriving as well. But look at that, 10 to 12 degrees in the far south, and that cold air is sinking southwards widely across Scotland, Northern England, and into parts of Northern Ireland. A frost could develop through the early hours of Christmas Eve as that colder air is sinking in. We'll have to see how far south it does get. So we do have a look at the GFS to try and see how far south that cold air will get. I did say the GFS does go very cold today. The other runs not following it, sort of the same sort of longevity of the cold spell, but they're all showing that cold air trying to push in. So do follow it. You can see the low pressure over the top of us at the moment, starting to move eastwards. But the problem is these lows over the top of us. If we just freeze it there at the 23rd at midday, we've got this big elongated area of low pressure, cold northerly winds feeding into it. If these lows move into Europe, like they generally do, but of course we've got blocked weather around at the moment, so things are not really going as they normally do. But if it did head eastwards, then we would open the flood doors to Arctic air once again for Christmas Day. However, if it stayed over the top of us or sort of stalled a bit, that cold air just sort of sinks into the low pressure system, actually fueling it and sort of spinning it up and generally giving us average conditions. Now what the GFS does is clears it out into the North Sea. Watch how that low pressure goes into Scandinavia and another low drops down towards the Azores, and we pull in a bitterly cold northerly wind through Christmas Day into Boxing Day as well. Now there is a dividing line of that cold air to a much warmer air just to our south. The GFS has the cold air consuming us. Could be some snow in southern England there through Boxing Day perhaps, as that cold air does come up against milder air, but eventually high pressure does move in and we pull in bitterly cold easterly winds for the 28th, 29th of December, all the way into New Year's Day. And we could see, look at that, huge cold air pushing down for the new year and low pressure wrapping in that, and it could go bitterly cold. It goes into a locked-in cold spell here, very similar to what we've had the last few days, and it would probably be even colder and even snowier being later in the winter. Sort of with colder air masses around, the -10 ice foam coming in more widely, and a lot more low pressure around, so more snow as well. There are definitely trends of that high pressure building into our north, but it's how it gets there and whether sort of follows on from that cold air trying to push southwards through Christmas, through the Christmas Day, Christmas Eve and Boxing Day period. So huge uncertainty. This is one scenario, as we see on the Ensemble members, it's got a little bit of support, but it goes for a very long cold spell. Not many runs going for that. Quite a few showing cold air coming in at times for southern England, but we'll have to see. Now, the GEM, just to compare that, has that low pressure over the top of us, and again, if we freeze at the 23rd, very similar pattern, cold northerly winds coming in, so it's exactly the same, low pressure over the top of us, elongated low pressure, and what happens is a bit of a low drops to our east, but this low pressure system doesn't drop southwards or to the southeast, and we do pull in a bit of cold air for Christmas Day, but in the end, that high pressure builds to our north, and that low towards our south doesn't drop away, and actually encourages southwesterly winds. And even though it's a very similar pattern, just because that low pressure didn't drop towards the Azores and the other low didn't clear towards Scandinavia, we pull up a southwesterly wind. Now, if we do watch how the air masses evolve, you can see the cold air does dig in for a bit, for eventually all that cold air, look at it, filters out into the Atlantic, fueling the low and pushing up very mild air towards us. Again, this is nearly exactly the same in terms of actual pressure patterns and general sort of overall atmospheric patterns to the GFS. Just slight different positioning of the high pressure, low pressure, and where it moves is now pushing in a southwesterly wind instead of a northeasterly wind, with that northerly wind heading out into the Atlantic. So again, very similar on a knife edge, depending on what happens to those lows through the Christmas Eve to Boxing Day period, which the models have not resolved yet. If we do have a look at the ECMWF, see how that does compare. Again, low pressure involved at the moment. As we head towards the 23rd, you can see again, northerly winds trying to push in, getting towards Scotland, that elongated area of low pressure, and it does try to clear to the east, and we actually do see cold northerly winds there through Boxing Day. It actually stays, but we don't see the block. We don't see that high pressure getting further northwards. So this actually signs more of the GFS in terms of the low clearing towards Scandinavia, the low clearing down towards the Azores, but it doesn't create any major blocking. So it only is a couple of days of much colder weather. Now you can see the very cold air pushes in, the -10 ice firm potentially pushes in, and eventually the high pressure over the top of us. So it could produce some snow, but more likely just cold and dry, probably very cold actually, with that high pressure toppling, inversion under a very cold air mass, nonetheless, very cold days and very cold, frosty, icy nights as well. And again, if that high pressure did get going around Scandinavia, which doesn't look likely to here, but it did on the GFS, then we could go into more of a sustained cold period into the new year. So definitely a scope here for cold weather through the Christmas period. It just really is how those low pressure systems evolve through that Boxing Day, or through the Christmas Day, Boxing Day, Christmas Eve sort of period, that sort of 3-day stretch there. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then of course whether we see that high pressure transition into more of a northern blocking system than just a mid-Atlantic ridge extending towards Greenland. So if we do finish by just having a look at the Ensemble members, you can see a lot of scatter here from the GFS Ensemble members. Generally around average to above average over the course of the next sort of 3, 4, 5 days. As we head towards Christmas Day, you can see we're generally average to maybe slightly below average, and then we see maybe half the Ensemble members plunge towards cold weather, maybe actually more than half, maybe 2/3 plunge towards colder, -5 sort of air masses. The operational run there, some support from some runs, goes very cold into a locked in cold spell. Others go to more of a moderately cold spell, others stay around average, and then you can see maybe a quarter go very mild, probably siding with the GEM run with a southwesterly wind. And then into the longer term, we just have a huge scatter. There is a drying trend, so again, that is following on from that potential high pressure moving northwards, giving us a bit more of a blocking pattern, maybe colder easterlies, but again, we'll have to see how that does develop. And if we do look at the dew points, you can see generally trending towards freezing, so cold weather taking over from majority of the runs. 2 meter temperatures trending more towards sort of the low single digits. Again, I wouldn't look at these too literally because we've got a huge scatter here from some runs showing freezing in the day, others showing 12 degrees. So we're going to see a lot of spread here. So yeah, very interesting seeing that. And the new day snow spike showing snow depth from Christmas Day period all the way to the 28th. Again, it's not reliable, but it's just showing you the potential there from quite a few Ensemble members. Do you compare it to Glasgow, though, you can see much more confidence here for a cold spell starting on the 24th all the way to the 28th, 29th for the uncertainty builds. And that's just because that cold air mass, we're pretty sure, is going to move into Scotland and Northern England, but whether it clears southwards is yet to be determined. Wherever that cold air does hit the mild air, though, there will be a lot of snow. So here is showing a lot of snow from some of these Ensemble members where the cold air gets into Northern England and Scotland, but not Southern England, and we see moist air pushing up against that, so and it's producing heavy snow. So the potential here is some areas in the north could see a lot of snow through the Christmas period. In the south, it could be 10 degrees, or it could be cold for all, and less snow in terms of sort of weatherfront snow, and more in terms of convection. So I do think Scotland, Northern England, maybe Northern Ireland have a good chance here of seeing some relatively cold weather over the Christmas period, and potentially relatively snowy weather as well. The exact way we see that snow and cold, we'll have to see. It's whether it does get to other areas as well. If you do look at the ECMWF Ensemble members, just to compare as well, again, you can actually see probably, once again, on the cold side for the Glasgow, and you can see probably for London, once again, we have huge spread. Some Ensemble members going very cold, include the ECMWF operational, and maybe half the runs from around the 26th to the 30th period, but then also quite a few staying very mild. It is slightly more delayed, with the colder air spreading through maybe on the 26th, 27th, instead of the 25th, 26th. Like the GFS Ensemble members were more for, but you can see there is still huge scatter here, and these average lines keep moving. So again, we'll have to wait another day or two to see this deciphered. I'm pretty sure it has to be sort of has to be sort of make up their minds, the models, in the next day or two, because it's sort of 4 or 5 days away, Christmas sort of Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, when this starts to sort of evolve. So we'll have to see what happens, but there definitely is prospects here for cold weather, maybe a locked-in cold spell like the GFS goes, or maybe just some brief cold weather, or maybe cold air for Scotland, Northern England, and then the mild weather comes back in like the GEM was showing. If we should just compare the GEM Ensemble members, we don't normally have a look at these. You can see the operational GEM there is a huge outlier. Again, it's got sort of 3 or 4 supports, but most are much colder. So again, we can't completely discount it, but I just wanted to emphasise that it is on the very mild end of the Ensemble members. So we have to see what happens. Definitely is a chance here of cold weather through the Christmas period. Maybe not arriving in time for Christmas Day and Boxing Day for the south, but definitely looks likely in the north, and there will be snow probably accompanied by that as well. But we will have to decipher that later this week and see exactly what is in store for the last week of the month. But could we see a return of much colder weather? I do think there is quite a decent chance we do as we head to the end of this December. It's going to be very interesting to see the eventual sort of data and statistics for this month, as we've seen basically cold weather followed by a few days of very mild weather, and we could see a very cold end to the month as well, at least for some areas. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.